Most retirees don't realize that the way they time their taxes, not just simply how much they pay, can shape their entire retirement outcome. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the math and the nuances comparing RMDs, Roth conversions, and why for some people, voluntarily paying 12% or 22% tax in their 60s, for example, may result in far less taxes over time than just simply waiting until RMDs begin at age 73 or age 75. If you're new to the channel, my name's Justin. I own a financial planning firm in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, where we help retirees all across the country make smart financial decisions. And in over 15 years, I worked with many clients where we've mapped out how this actually works in real life, not just theory. And I found for the ones who have, especially those who have those larger pre-tax balances, the comparison can be tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands in avoidable lifetime taxes. But this video isn't about pushing or marketing Roth conversions or suggesting everybody needs to avoid RMDs at all costs. That's certainly not the case. It's more about understanding what happens if you do nothing, if you should do something, and then deciding what kind of planning actually makes sense for you personally. So let's dig right into it. First off, I want to set the record straight on RMDs. This is not one of those you need to be terrified of the RMD boogeyman videos. Required minimum distributions are not a disaster. In fact, I'd say having large RMDs means you did a lot of things right. You saved well, you invested well, your accounts grew. That's a great thing. That's if you're looking at all kinds of different financial situations, this is an objectively good problem to have. So feel free to pat yourself on the back a little bit because you built up a large pre-tax balance. That's great. But just because it's a good problem to have doesn't mean it shouldn't be addressed thoughtfully, and that's what we want to do here. And what this video is really about is strategy, understanding how RMDs work, how they interact with the rest of your retirement income, and how you can plan for them in a way that gives you more flexibility and clarity instead of just reacting to them later, which is what most people unfortunately do. So you don't need to worry or stress about RMDs, but you can be and you should be smart and strategic about them. And so what exactly happens when RMDs start? Let's break down how they change your control over retirement income. So during your working years, even in those early years of retirement, you typically have a lot of control over your income. It's all up to you when it comes in. But at age 73, or for some, it'll be age 75, required minimum distributions change that whole dynamic. RMDs force you to withdraw a percentage of your traditional IRA balance or your pre-tax 401k balance every year. That percentage starts at about 3.7, 3.8%, and then increases as you age, regardless of whether you need the income or not. And for retirees with meaningful IRA or 401k balances, that can easily translate into 50, 80, or 100,000 plus of taxable income every single year. And the issue isn't the withdrawal itself. It's now that the IRS is choosing the timing, the amount, and the tax consequence for you, which I found in my experience that part really bothers some people and they just don't like it. They don't like being forced to take income and pay tax on it when they don't want to. And once those RMDs start, your ability to manage income strategically becomes very, very limited. But the true impact of RMDs, they don't really show up in isolation. It shows up in what they trigger next. RMDs have sort of a cascade effect. They don't really live in a vacuum. So they'll come in and stack on top of Social Security. They'll stack on top of pension income if you have it. They stack on top of dividends, interest, capital gains. That stacking effect is where many retirees get caught off guard and they get a little blindsided by it. And as income rises, up to 85% of your Social Security benefits can be subject to tax. Now, it's not taxed at 85%. It's up to 85% of the total benefit can be subject to tax. So a lot of people will get those confused. So I want to clarify that. But what RMDs can also do that blindsides some people is it can actually make their Medicare premiums more expensive because that's income-based. So if your income goes $1 over the threshold, then you have to have that, what they call that IRMA penalty. You have to pay thousands more a year for your Medicare Part B and Part D. And so between the taxes, between possible Medicare premiums increasing, I talk to people every single week who feel blindsided by these things. They feel like they've saved responsibly, they followed the rules, and then RMDs arrive and suddenly they feel like they lost control of their tax situation, or they feel like they're being punished for being a good saver and a good investor. And they know that they should probably do something about it, but they're kind of unsure of what they should do, how all the pieces fit together, and it feels a little bit complex. And that uncertainty is what leads to bad decisions, or in many cases, sometimes no decisions at all. But not everybody, I'd say not everybody sees this as a crisis. It just all depends on your personality and where you're at financially. In fact, some retirees choose just to ride it out, let RMDs come as they may. So let's talk about the different mindsets around RMDs, because I think this is important. Some people care a lot about RMD control. Some don't, and that's okay. So you might see some content lately. I've seen a few videos that say RMDs don't matter. People make too big a deal of them. And for some retirees, that's definitely true. I've worked with many people who are perfectly comfortable letting RMDs come, pay the taxes. They're just not that worried about it. They value simplicity. They don't want to feel like they're complicating their life or micromanage their plan. That's a valid choice. Others, though, feel very differently. If you made it this far in the video, I'm guessing that's you. They want predictability. They want more control. They cannot stand the idea of the IRS dictating their income once they hit their 70s, and then also forcing them to pay higher Medicare premiums. They just don't like it. It feels punitive, right? So, but I would say neither mindset is technically right or wrong. I'd say the real problem is not knowing which camp you're in, or drifting into a tax outcome that doesn't match your values or your expectations. And for those who do want that control and value that control, Roth conversions then enter the conversation, but it does come with some important nuance too. So I'd say Roth conversions are a powerful and useful tool when used in the right context. I'd think of it more as a specialty tool. It's not an everyday tool like a hammer or a screwdriver. It's something that's a lot more specialized that doesn't always apply to everybody. And it's not an all or nothing decision either. It's not about trying to get everything into Roth. The goal isn't zero RMDs at any cost, because I'll run into that mindset a lot as well. The goal is the lowest possible lifetime tax cost given your income, your assets, your priorities, and what you want to do with your money and how much you want to spend, which is the most important thing. And for many retirees, projected RMDs might be relatively modest. In those cases, aggressive conversions or conversions at all may not even add that much benefit, and could even create unnecessary tax or headaches along the way that they don't need. That's why this has to be modeled and has to be very, very individualized. And so depending on lots of different personal factors and individual factors, sometimes the right answer is converting more aggressively. Sometimes it's converting very modestly. Sometimes it's converting not at all and just doing nothing. I'd say Roth conversions are more about precision, not perfection. And that brings up something really important that I think gets lost in a lot of these videos on Roth conversions, RMDs, which is nuance. In my experience doing this for a while, tax planning is not about quick hacks or one-size-fits-all answers. The hardest part, I'd say, of making this type of content on YouTube is that people want simple, clear answers. And you're probably watching this and saying, well, just tell me what to do. Just give me something for my situation. When it comes to Roth conversions, taxes, long-term planning especially, simple answers can be dangerously incomplete. And a simple answer might not be able to be given just because of the complexity of the subject. And especially if you're trying to model this out, or even if you're paying for tax planning advice, you don't want a templated generic strategy that applies to the masses. You want something tailored specifically to your circumstances and all the nuances of your life. And that's exactly how it should be, especially when it comes to financial advice, and especially when it comes to something that needs to be as specific as tax planning and conversions. And now, if Roth conversions are a good fit for you and it is on your radar, then timing is everything. There's one window that delivers the most value, and that's those gap years between the ages of, I'd say, 60, 73, 75. During that window, income is the lowest that it's ever going to be in your lifetime. You can control a lot of how much tax you recognize, just depending on how your accounts are set up, what type of accounts you have. Forced distributions have not started yet. Hopefully Social Security hasn't started yet. And you have a very, very big window to fill those lower brackets effectively. Once RMDs begin, though, that flexibility largely disappears. And how much difference does this actually make? Well, let's take a look at a quick numbers example. I promise it's quick. I won't put too many numbers on the screen. But here's the comparison that most people don't actually run. Let's say you convert $50,000 today at a 12% tax rate. That's $6,000 in tax. If you wait and you take that same $50,000 as an RMD later at 22 or 24%, well, now that bill is $11,000 or $12,000 in tax. So that's a difference of $5,000 to $6,000, give or take, just from a single decision in a single year. So now imagine multiplying that over several years, then factor in potential tax-free growth that you could have had, reduced future forced income, and that difference can often mean tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of your retirement. And this isn't about avoiding taxes entirely. Can't really do that. As they say, death and taxes, but it's about choosing when you pay them, how much, at what rate, instead of letting RMDs dictate that decision for you. And retirees who benefit the most from these kind of strategies, they don't guess, they follow a framework that makes each step intentional. And I'd say at the core, there's 4 critical planning components here. So number 1 is what we'd call tax bracket mapping. Each year, you want to identify how much room that might possibly be in the bracket, whether it's 12%, 22%, and then calculate how much space you think there'll be. And you're going to need to check that, though, throughout the year and verify it at the end, because something could happen. There could be unexpected income. Number 2 is you want to be doing multi-year projections of what your income's going to be. And I'd say this is probably the most important step and probably the hardest to do for most people. Honestly, it's very difficult to do multi-year projections without some kind of tax planning software. But you can't look at 1 year in isolation. You need to be looking at multiple years. And then step 3 is coordinating that, of course, with Social Security, pensions, watching out for those potential IRMA cliffs, any other income that you might be getting. Definitely needs to be coordinated with all those. That's where the multi-year projections come in. So you can see, okay, when do we plan on taking Social Security? Maybe maybe you have a rental property or something and you want to sell it in 2 years. How's that going to impact the strategy? So all those things need to be looked at in advance. And the last step, number 4, is account source and timing and administration of it. So where are you going to pay the taxes from if you do a Roth conversion? Are you going to pay taxes with outside money? Are you going to withhold from the IRA? All things being equal, it's usually better to pay the taxes with outside money because you're going to get more into the Roth. But you definitely want to consider there's definitely pros and cons to each, especially with the administration of it. For some people, it's a pain to send in quarterly payments. They don't want to necessarily run the risk of a penalty. If you withhold from your IRA, the IRS considers that as you paying the taxes throughout the year. However, if you're under age 59 and a half, you do not want to do that because the IRS considers that an early withdrawal. So if you're under 59 and a half, you pretty much have to pay the taxes with outside money. So just an example, lots of different factors to consider there. So those need to be carefully planned out too. But if you do all this correctly, then this framework can enable you to strategically and intelligently convert some of those pre-tax dollars, keeping lifetime tax lower than it would be if you had waited. So just as important, it gives you flexibility also in control, which I said in some of my other videos, I think is an underrated and undervalued benefit. I think some people value the control most of all, especially those who feel taxes are just going to keep going up, and they would just rather have that control now. And I'll throw it in again, as I said at the beginning of the video, this doesn't mean conversions are always right for everybody. It doesn't mean everyone should be looking at doing them or that every year necessarily requires one. But if you follow a framework and not guesswork, then you're in control of the outcome. You're doing real, intelligent financial planning instead of just winging things and hoping it turns out for the best. And now that we've gone over some of the strategy here, if you've heard all this and say, this sounds interesting, but I don't want to do any of this myself. This is just too much. I'd rather have help with it. Feel free to click the link in the description below the video. It'll take you to a page where I talk about how I integrate tax planning with everything else in a retirement approach, investments, withdrawal strategy, all those different things. And it'll give you an option to book a call with me. If I can help, just let me know. Glad to do it. Thanks for watching the video. As always, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.